Apple's miniature iPhone is back for 2021. With the iPhone 13 mini, it's packing the same specs as a standard iPhone 13, but in a smaller package that's better suited to those who want a smaller form factor. Arriving alongside the larger iPhone 13, iPhone 13 Pro, and the iPhone 13 Pro Max, the iPhone 13 mini offers nearly all the same features, but in a more pocketable package. It certainly does a lot to meet up to its mini name tag. One huge thing that was disappointing last year was the pretty bad battery life that we were all kind of disappointed about. So let's see if the iPhone 13 mini is truly an upgrade to its predecessor or is just a rehash of the 12 mini.
I belong to you. I belong to you. Do just what you want. You're the one I trust.
To be completely honest with you, unless you look like very closely, it's pretty difficult to tell the difference between the iPhone 13 mini and its predecessor. The iPhone 12 mini introduced a striking new flat edge design that I believe was a massive improvement from what came before that device. And of course, the iPhone 12 mini was honestly one of the first phones in a long time to bring a truly great experience to a smartphone with a smaller form factor. The ceramic shield protected glass and aerospace grade aluminum is still there from the 12 mini to cut off some weight from this device. Now there are some changes to that design. However, the newer iPhones are just a tiny bit thicker overall with a substantially bigger camera bump. Like, it is actually pretty big. You have to see it in person. Anyway, the cases designed for the 12 and 12 mini can almost fit the newer phones. The camera bump is not only thicker, but the lenses have been rearranged to accommodate that giant new sensor, which is presented in the main wide angle camera. Now the phone sits pretty comfortably in one hand, which makes it easy to use. I found it that I was able to easily type on this phone and reach all the areas with my thumb, and I didn't really have to stress about using this device with one hand, and that's why a lot of people appreciate the iPhone 13 mini. Now, the power button on this device is of course located on the right side once again. On the left side, you'll find the volume rockers and that mute switch. On the bottom, lightning port with a speaker and a microphone. And on the top, there's nothing. On the back, you have the cameras, of course. And as expected, no headphone jack. It is an iPhone. So the last difference between this and its predecessor is that notch housing Face ID in the selfie camera had been shrunk down by 20%. But don't get too excited because it's still there. So hopefully we don't see this with the next generation of devices because I'm getting tired of these notches, honestly. Also, you do have an IP68 rating, which means it is dust and water resistant, and you can submerge it in water up to 6 meters for 30 minutes. Battery life on last year's iPhone 12 mini was pretty terrible, as I mentioned earlier in this video. So for this year, as expected, Apple did increase the battery life across their entire lineup. I'd say from my experience, I practically use this device for a lot of social media, basically scrolling through Instagram a lot and some Facebook, and listening to a ton of music and watching a few YouTube videos here and there. At the end of the day, most days I'd have about like 10% of battery left, which is nothing crazy. So yes, the battery life is definitely better, but I wouldn't say it's like that huge of a difference between the 12 mini's battery life that we got last year. Also, fast charging is limited to 20 watts, which does further prolong the battery life. And even MagSafe is on here and you get about 15 watts of power with that. So let's talk about that new display. So the iPhone 13 mini features a 5.4 inch screen with the resolution of 1080 by 2340. That means it does have the highest pixel density at 476 ppi. Kudos to Apple for finally switching over to this OLED panel, which offers a superior experience to the LCDs. Since the screen is smaller, it's a little bit hard to appreciate that high resolution, but it is the top tier Super Retina XDR OLED display with strong brightness levels. You're getting all the same screen tech as the iPhone 13 here, but with a little bit less space. The displays still have the standard 60 Hz refresh rate that we saw on last year's mini. That means you won't be getting that crazy fluid experience that you have on the iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max with their 120 Hz ProMotion displays. Chances are, if you are picking up the iPhone 13 mini, you probably don't care too much about that. especially if you're coming from one of the previous models, because it's something that you're not gonna really notice unless you put it side by side. I have to say, having 120 Hz refresh rate does feel more fluid, but it's not that deep. One of the major components that Apple has upgraded is the chipset, of course. They do that every year, but we went from the A14 to the A15 Bionic, which is a more refined chipset. It has 6 cores and it has a 4-core GPU. This time, Apple claims that the CPU is up to 50% faster than its nearest rival, while the new GPU is up to 30% faster. The fastest chip that an Android phone can use right now is a Snapdragon 888, which already had a hard time keeping up with the A14 Bionic from last year's models. So just think about how fast the A15 is compared to that chip. While the Pro models perform better across the board with their bigger GPUs and 50% more RAM, I have to say the $700 iPhone 13 mini does some serious work and provides the best value for the price in this lineup. Your storage options here are 128, 256, or 512 gigs, which comes with 4 gigs of RAM as well. If you want more storage, then you'll have to go for the iPhone 13 Pro or 13 Pro Max, which offer up to 1 terabyte of storage, which is pretty ridiculous. Let's take a look at those new cameras. Both the iPhone 13 and 13 mini have the same exact camera system, a regular wide-angle camera and an ultra-wide. Both have been upgraded, but the major improvement comes from that wide-angle sensor. Just like the battery, the improvements to the wide-angle camera sensor is pretty simple. They just made it a little bit bigger. A bigger camera sensor can take more light more quickly and produce better results. Apple happened to have a sensor like that lying around, the one from last year's iPhone 12 Pro Max. The 12 Pro Max stood apart from all the other iPhones last year by having the largest sensor, and now the sensor is the default this year. And from the moment the 12 Pro Max was released, it has been probably one, or if not the best, smartphone camera for both photos and videos. I'm happy to report that the iPhone 13 mini improves on those results. Details are sharp and accurate, colors are rich without being oversaturated, focusing is fast and reliable, portrait mode is good enough to use on a day-to-day, low light and night sight are both exceptional. The ultra-wide sensor was also updated with better low light performance, but it's fairly minor. What I mostly see improved is the white balance and color when on night mode. In low light, colors are also a little bit more true to life on this year's iPhone 13 mini. The video quality is great. The main camera has sensor stabilization, which means you're gonna get some pretty steady shots, and it's gonna help you when you're taking those night photos. These cameras can do all the modes that matter in terms of 4K and slow-mo and handles them pretty well. Apple has also introduced 2 new camera modes with the iPhone 13, photographic profiles and cinematic mode. I did a detailed iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max review where I talk about these features, so if you want to see that, a card should pop up one of these corners and links will be down in the description. I get really in depth on the new cameras this year. If you have an iPhone 12 or 12 mini, and especially if you have the iPhone 12 Pro, you don't need to upgrade. If you're coming from something older and want a small phone, then basically this is the best that you can get right now. Cameras get better every year and every company promises good battery life after all. And compared to the massive changes we saw on iPhones last year, the 13 mini looks like a rehash, more like an iPhone 12s mini. It's the best small phone that you can possibly buy, beating anything Android can offer right now. Fans who love smaller phones will love this device as it fits in many pockets and comes in very handy. I can already think of a few people who would personally enjoy having this device. With that said, this has been Victor Kamanga with another Everything Technology video. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing all of you in the next one. Bye.